Morning. If you're here for a lecture on France in the 1800s, you're in the right place. Uh, this morning is we're talking about early seed starting and companion planting. Um, so I think I'd start with the seeds because otherwise we won't get there. We'll be talking too much about companion planting. How many of you are seed starters? Okay, good. Have you started a bunch already? All right, good. Um, seed starting is not as complicated as one would think. We talked a little bit about it last week. When starting your seeds inside, the most important thing you can do is make sure that the soil that you're using is a good quality, lightweight soil. Normally, when I start seeds, I set up my seeds and I water the flats in first to make sure that there's plenty of water and moisture in the soil. I find that trying to water after I've planted is rather disruptive to the seeds. So water your seed base first. Lay your seeds out, and remember, if they're too small to pick up with your fingers, chances are good they need light for germination. We talked about that last week for a bit, that a lot of the seed packets really don't give you enough information on what you need to be doing with your seed. So, in my opinion, if when in doubt, don't cover, because the seed will work its way down into the soil when you water, when you move it. Better that it's a very light and near the top than too far down. Another issue that I find with seed starters is people tend to overwater, and the substrate, the soil, is too heavy by the time, or too condensed and packed by the time the seeds begin to germinate. There are a lot of good sites that will tell you how many days it takes to germinate. Bottom heat will, of course, increase the germination rate and will cut down on the amount of time you need to start seeds. If you don't have um, if you don't have a heat mat for your seeds, that's fine. If you're trying to get things to go faster, you can put your seeds like on top of the refrigerator, because there'll be heat coming from that. Put them on top of the radiators. There'll be heat coming from that. But just here's, I think, where people go wrong with seed is they are anxious for the seed to germinate and they water too much. And the soil becomes heavy and it becomes more compact, and just the little rootlets just can't make their way through the soil. So start with a moist soil. Lay your seeds out, and then either cover them or not cover. But when I cover seeds, I no longer use soil. I use a very fine vermiculite. And I think vermiculite, if you're a seed starter, is a good investment. It's very lightweight, but it retains moisture, which helps the seed to find what it needs for germination. A lot of the seeds you're going to start are going to need what's called a stratification. They need cold. So we're talking about starting seeds early. Like I've got so much stuff growing outside, inside. It's everywhere. Um, Temperature is important. A lot of the plants that you plant or you want from your garden can be started in the fall, which doesn't help us now. But down the road, if you want to get your perennial started from seed or like that, a lot of those can be planted, and I would say plant end of September, sometime in September. We get good rain, which helps them. by freezing and warming and freezing and warming. That helps to um, it helps to scar the seed surface so that they germinate better. So try a lot of plant material. Try a lot of your seeds come autumn, especially perennial. Vegetable, not so much. Although I would say what you call a vegetable. I mean, an asparagus is a perennial vegetable. Um, and a lot of that, I mean, if you can do it, plant in the fall. I do a lot of my planting and most of my like heavy duty expensive planting I'll do in the fall because I know the creator will water for me at the correct intervals and I don't have to haul a hose. And then when the cold weather comes, they sit there, nothing's gonna bother them. So you would be better off to plant and to start in the autumn than in the spring, where you have to bring the hoses, bring water, and keep on top of them. A lot goes on under the soil that we don't see. And it takes a while, especially if the plant material is mulched with leaves or straw or whatever you're using. It would take a while for the first few inches of soil to freeze solid. So there's a lot going on. Even when we're cold, the earth could still be holding warmth and making those seeds germinate. So if you have a seed that you've had trouble with, um, I find for early starting, like I've already done a lot of my cut flowers from seed. They've already been planted and they'll come up. Your nigellas and your there's just so much poppies, all kinds of poppies. It's good to get them in like really early. But as far as plants that you could start now, even though Hartland, I'm sure you're quite frozen, and if you're not frozen, you're really wet. Um, but you could start your peas now. You can start your lettuces, your carrots, your radishes, most of your leafy greens, your Swiss chard, all of that can go out and get started. I just saw some weird thing on Facebook, so bear with me. But somebody said that if you have dandelions, you can start planting. Like, do you agree with that? If you have dandelions in flower, yeah, I don't, but I'm just saying when I do, does that mean you're ready to plant? That means you're ready to plant some things. Remember, when people talk temperature, they always talk air temperature, which is very different from soil temperature. Um, Plants that need it cold, and peas can do cold. Um, I've got sweet peas that I put out of my green. I potted them and put them outside in a cold frame. They're already up. They're probably 5-6 inches up, even with the cold, freezing and unthawing. It's good for them, and it hardens them up. What I am protecting them from is wind. The wind will dry them out. It will dry the soil, and it's rough on the plants when they're small. So I have my cold frames closed from the north and the west, and I'll open on the south and the east so that enough air comes in and moves. But I always protect them from the north and the west winds. Um, so the same, if you've started plant material and the house is getting crowded, like I'm waiting for Colbert School this week will be picking up uh, lots of pansies from me. So as soon as those pansies are gone on Friday, I've got half a greenhouse ready to come out and take that place. So plan ahead for space, but you can move things out, especially if you have some kind of, I think, wind protection most important. Up against the house, use a microclimate like your foundation on the south. Stops that wind, gathers heat at night. I used to have in my garden, I used to have a huge rock, and that's where I planted my peppers because I knew that it would get radiant heat, long after the sunset, the heat would be there for it. But remember that air temperature is not soil temperature. So germination in the cold will take longer than germination in warm soil. So just be prepared for that. You can use temperature to control the growth of your plants. For example, I know that up high is in my greenhouse is hot, and I know down on the ground is cold. So the cold loving things, the things I want to grow slow and mean, they're on the ground. And before I bring anything out of the greenhouse, I try to give it a time on the ground in the greenhouse so it's cold, and then move it outside to begin to harden it off even more. So if you're starting seeds in your house, start them off and be kind to them, and then start to treat them a little roughly. And we could talk about that now. Ways to harden up your seedlings. Um, there are several ways. Um, what I do in the greenhouse when I'm getting ready to send out trays, 806s. An 806 is 8 packs of 6 plants. Okay, so in the industry, an 806, when they're ready to go out, I will not water them, and I'll let them wilt a little bit, and that strengthens them up because they get used to saying, "Oh well, we're not getting babied here anymore. She's neglecting us." I feel a lot of neglect coming. So that's how you can prepare them. So you can turn a fan onto your seedlings. A fan, the air moving through, will help. There's a disease called dampening off on your seedlings, and it looks like somebody's pinched and twisted your stem right near the soil level. Your plant's not going to recover from that. It's done. The top may stay green for a little while because it does have some things in the stem, some moisture it can continue to draw from, but it's done. So the way to stop the dampening off is never water at night. Always water in the morning. All right. I find it hard when I'm growing as much as I grow. If I notice somebody's dry, not to water them at night, but hit them first thing in the morning. So they can go through the night a little dry, and it won't kill them unless they're desperately dry. Then water them. But if you can get away with not watering them until the morning, you'll be rewarded. So before you're ready to put them outside, move air movement. Open a window, put a fan on them, and that movement. What happens is it strengthens the stems, it wiggles the root system, and it strengthens that as well. So you end up with a better plant. Um, so you can let them dry out a little bit, put wind on them, let them be colder. These are ways of hardening them off before you move them outside. Once they've gone outside, don't bring them back in. That's a rule in my greenhouse. Once something's gone out, it stays out. If I have to build a building around it, it's staying out. It doesn't come back into the greenhouse. So, you might have to say, oh my God, it's going to snow, put it under the picnic table and put a box over it, but it's not coming back in because then you have to start the hardening all over again.
The watering, bottom watering, top watering?
Depends on what you're growing. I find for seedlings, bottom water takes too long for it to come up, and you notice that the top will be too wet, then it's saturated. Remember that when seedlings are growing, they need the air in the soil for those little tiny roots to find their way. If you ever bought let's say someone brought you a plant, and this is great, I love this, put it in a bucket of water till you get to it. You're not ready to get to it because it's not in your brain to get to it. You leave it in there too long, it starts to stink, and that's because the roots have rotted. So it's a saying in soil, if it's too wet, the roots rot. So for me, I let things dry out a little. Like no one waters in the greenhouse but me. And you should be that way protective, because that's the most important job in the greenhouse, is to water and to see. And when in doubt, I mean, the soil might fool you by its look. Pick some up and see. Say, oh, this is a little dry. There's not anything for the plant to have to grow on. Or you can say, oh, this is much wetter down here than I thought. Like this flat is heavy. You need to dry it out. So be really cautious when you water. It's the most important job.
I think that's the thing I do the worst. I try so hard, but thank you.
Yep. Yep. It is helpful to know when to stop. But for them to go through, before I move them out, I let them go through a few days of being dry, and then I apologize and I say, I'm doing this for your own good. You know what I mean? And then I water them, and then let them go through and be dry again. And that way, when they go outside, and they're going to dry up probably quicker. There's going to be wind on them. There's going to be a lot of things. You can start hardening them in the house before you move them out. So withholding water, adding wind, and lowering temperatures. And in my greenhouse, they say, for example, if you're growing, this is what happens when you're buying plants. A greenhouse will turn the temperatures up so that, plants do their growing at night. That's when the parties really happen. They do their growing at night. So all day long, they're basking and taking in light. And then when you leave and the lights go off, the plants go, okay, let's get to it. And that's when they do their growing. So you want to, when you're looking at your seedlings, give them some abuse before you move them out.
Is that true for herbs too?
It's true for every plant. Yeah. What I've done is, yesterday I did a lot of herbs, and I put them all on the ground to grow. Because I want them to grow slow, and I want them to grow firm. I don't want leggy. There was a place everybody shopped for their plants, and I of course check out my competition, and the sage is like this, and is long, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my, they probably just turn the heat up, and that's what's going to happen to catch up. A lot of places will turn the heat up, so you'll get a big overgrown plant that you cannot maintain through the summer. Better to get a plant, like when I sell my hanging baskets, I like them so that you can see what you're getting, but I don't want them huge, because that means if they're, what is above is also below. So if you have big growth on the top, then your pot is probably close to root bound. So you won't be able to fertilize it, you won't be able to keep it watered, and you'll definitely need to replace it when the heat comes in July. Whereas if you grow them slowly, you'll notice a plant that's grown slower because the internodes between the leaves is closer. When a plant is grown fast and hot, it's very leggy, and the length between the leaves is further apart. So that tells you that plant was hurried into production. That wouldn't be my first choice. Just because what you want is something that's grown like a Hartlandite. You know what I mean? Cold all the time, windy, beaten up. You know what I mean? That's the kind of plant you want. Something that's had to suffer a little bit. So in my greenhouse, I do manage the growth by withholding water. I open the doors like on a cold day to get all the moisture out. And if they run cold for a day or two, that's good for them. And I keep my temperatures to the lower side so that everything grows slower but firmer. And so do the same with your seedlings, and you'll have better luck. All right. Some things you shouldn't start early at all. For example, beans. Beans want the soil to be warm. And here again, it's about soil temperature, not air temperature. people don't get that. I mean, I have these people come to me, where's your impatience? I say, it's May. It's like the 1st of May. Yeah, I know. It's a beautiful day. It's 70. I want impatience. I want basil. And it's like, well, you can't have that. The soil's not warm enough yet. You know, there are places up and down the road that will sell it to you, but that doesn't mean you should be buying it. And then people say, well, I'll keep it in my garage. Why would you do that? You know, first of all, lack of light, not being tended. Just let me take care of it and come back and get it when the time is right. Doesn't that make more sense? Yeah. So don't be in a hurry because there's not going to be a shortage of basil. You know, there's not going to be a shortage of things. And if you do business at a greenhouse where you know the owner, or a greenhouse where they're growing their own things, I have people who leave me a list of what they want. And I know to pull that for them, and they'll come by when the time is right. Not going to run out, you know. And anyways, you're buying more than you need because we're plant people. We tend to do that, right? Yeah. Right? I mean, that's why I own a garden shop. It's like I just couldn't decide. I just didn't want to have to decide anymore. I want them all. So do what you love. So starting your seeds early, just make sure you grow them slowly. Um, when they start to get elongated, then you know you need more light, which you can give them. Um, but harden them off as they go and slow them down. What you want is a short, fat, dark green little plant. You don't, bigger isn't better. Bigger isn't better when it comes to plants. You know, something well grown, that's what you're looking for. Thick, mean. Well, normally, you right, a little shorter would be better for you than something tall and you've already got an issue. Like, how am I going to stake this? How am I going to grow this? If you have to hold the plant where you're going up to the cash register to keep it upright, it's probably not a good investment, you know? Yeah. And that goes with herbs, anything like that. So for me, I seed in, like I have basil in, and in a couple of weeks I'll do some more basil. I transplanted parsley, and then this week I'll do some more parsley. So it comes out in blocks. So everything isn't full grown. There's people who are ready to plant in May aren't the same people who want to plant in June, and you need quality plants. So stagger your seedlings so that they come out when you're ready. Okay, so we're good on that. All right, let's get to companion planting. Companion planting. This is a very hard lecture for me to give you, simply because companion planting means a lot to different people. So we'll cover that. Specifically, what plants go with what plants and what plants shouldn't go with what plants. Ooh, we cannot cover that. So let's talk about what companion planting is and different ways to use it in the garden. Some plants are poisonous to other plants. We know that black locust and black walnut trees, rue, the herb rue, wormwood, southernwood, a lot of those herbs also, they excrete a toxin that's very bad for the plants around them. And what they do is, this is how they make sure that nobody grows around them, so they have access to the light and the water and the nutrients in the soil um, that they require for their growth. So planting near these plants can be detrimental if you're not aware that that can be an issue. All right. A lot of those toxins, for example, of rue or wormwood, they're moved a lot by the water when it rains. Those toxins will move through the soil this way and affect what's around them. So once you're aware that a plant has those properties, they're lovely to grow, um, really, really good for deterring pests in the garden. So you have to weigh whether the pest pressure is worth that plant. So I'm thinking, well, I need wormwood here, there, and everywhere else. I don't want it in the garden. This might be a place to put wormwood or southernwood in a pot so that I limit the spread of its toxins. Uh, but the plant, the foliage of the plant would still have that deterring effect to insects. All right. So companion planting can be used for, first of all, bringing beneficial insects to the garden. And when you say a beneficial insect, what we're talking about, and we'll spend a minute on this, a beneficial insect would be a pollinator. Like you're not going to have squash if you don't have bees, unless you go out there with a paintbrush and do it yourself. So bees would be a beneficial insect. But the way to attract them would be by planting things that attract them to your garden. And once they get there, not poisoning them. Be careful where you buy your plants. No herbicides, no pesticides, no growth regulators, no systemics. You cannot see those in the plant. There is no law that says they have to tell you that they're in and on the plant. So if it's come from a huge grower, everybody's getting the same. You know what I mean? They're drip irrigation, and if one plant's getting it, everybody's getting it. Because they're not going to be like me and hand water what the, they're not doing that. So you need to protect your pollinators. You need to attract them to your garden. So the best things, and you're going to be really happy to hear this, plant colorful flowers, zinnias. Put a lot of those in. Leave some dandelions. That will get the bees used to coming to your garden saying, oh yeah, she's got good stuff here. You know, the people up the road with their lawns, yeah, don't go there. Shop, stay at her place. So bring in colorful flowers that the pollinators like. And I think in one of the other lectures, I was saying to you where I had wanted to plant some doubles of like a calibrachoa and that kind of thing. The pollinators find that hard to get in there and pollinate. So do the more simple forms. The more, like, everybody knows dahlias, right? Great big pom-poms, dinner plate, really fancy. Those are very hard for bees and such to pollinate, to get in there and do their thing. But if you did a dahlia that just looked like a daisy, more simple, that would be more of what your pollinators are looking for. Okay? So the more simple flowers. And zinnia is a good one. It's easy. You can start it from seed, just toss some seed in your garden when it warms up a bit and put in a 6-pack, whatever. And those bright colors, do bring the bees to you. I have all my pansies out. I've had them out for probably 3 or 4 weeks now, and bees all over them. So yeah, it's really good for our neighborhood. And every time someone takes a pansy bowl home, I think, good for your neighborhood too. Like, let's start feeding them. There's not a lot. So bringing a beneficial insect in, like a bee, you would want that. Butterflies are nectar sippers, and they're not the best for pollinating, but they help. Um, but something that you do want in your garden would be wasps. And I know people freak right out when they see them, but wasps are hunters, and they will hunt. Um, a lot of wasps, different varieties of wasps, will lay their eggs in parasitic worms. Have any of you grown a tomato and seen a hornworm? Oh, yeah, with that unicorn. They think that's going to endear them, right? No, looks like a unicorn. We'll keep him for a pet. Yeah, they decimated tomato plant overnight. So there are wasps that will lay their eggs in those. Well, it's good because then they consume them from the inside out and no reproduction. So bringing wasps into your garden is a good thing. So here I would suggest to you, even if you don't love herbs, to plant some. Dill, wonderful. Um, and the thing about dill is it is also a host to swallowtail butterflies. So when you see little worms on that dill, don't pick them off. That's going to be a butterfly. Okay. Um, Years ago, I had done some with my kids. Had raised up some painted lady butterflies, and it was a day just like this, but they were ready to be released. So we brought them down to my greenhouse and we let them go, but not everybody would leave the comfort of home. So I said, oh, well, I don't blame you, you poor little things. Let's go into the greenhouse. So I let them go in the greenhouse. It's warm in there and they're happy. And they flew right to this licorice plant. It's a Lismachia. It's a furry gray leaf. Do you know it? For an ornamental. So there are plants around here. For example, an Annapolis is a native plant with that same furry leaf. So a couple of weeks, maybe a week later, a lady had come to me and she said, I bought this plant from you and it has caterpillars on it. And I went, well, when I was in the greenhouse, I was thinking to myself, they kept going to this licorice plant. And I said, no, 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 silly beings. Don't you see all the flowers? Well, they had gone to that plant to lay their eggs. So I went, so when I'm talking to this woman and I'm embarrassed that my plant had something on it that wasn't good, and I'm feeling bad, and then I went, oh, that butterfly laid its egg on that. And I said to her, these butterflies will be, these little worms will be butterflies, and I'll give you a new plant. And I'm sorry about that. Get your own butterflies. And she took this plant and went home. And so it was like, okay, so now I learned and understood that that's what they were looking for to lay their eggs. So to make your yard a place where butterflies will come and bees will come and wasps and hornets will come, have a variety of plant material. But that furry leaf was a good host for her eggs. But you'll see them also on parsley and you'll see them also on dill. So when you're planting out your parsley and your dill, put out extra. That's what I do. When I see some dill that has caterpillars on them, I just remove them from the sale stand and hoard them for myself because I know what's going to come of it. All right. So that same dill and the same borage is a wonderful herb to bring pollinators. It's a tall, flowers in blue, very good for pollinators, bees and such. Um, the, the colonists used to use borage. There was no ice cubes. You couldn't get ice cubes, or you could get ice from an ice house, but it was expensive. So when they wanted to cool a drink in the summer, they would float borage flowers because it releases a nitrate that makes the drink appear cooler. Who knew? Okay? So the colonists knew. So those kinds of herbs. So have some herbs in your garden, and this is where you begin to companion plant. So companion plant could be planting where we're trying to bring in beneficial insects. And once you understand once you understand that that's what they're there for, like when you see a wasp, rejoice because they are taking out aphids, they are taking out parasitic type of worms. You know? Did you have a question?
Well, I think you're probably gonna go there, but like, I use, miracles to
Yeah.
keep things away.
Marigolds, marigolds are good, but I mean, we could go into every single flower and talk about it. We'd be here all day. Marigolds are a basic good for anything kind of thing, and the reason for marigolds is their smell. They're very pungent. So if you want to, um, usually on the cabbage family, that's where you get a lot of those worms nobody wants to eat. They find what they're looking for through smell, and you by putting marigolds and potting around them with different fragrant things, they don't know what's going on, and they leave. So marigolds, anything with fragrance in the leaves is good. So I think by adding herbs, um, especially herbs, but marigolds and things like that are good to help deter pests. But another way to use companion planting would be um, companion planting, one plant shading another plant. So we know that our lettuces and our leaf crops like spinach and Swiss chard, they prefer it cooler. And in order to let them grow better as the weather warms, plant them plant them using a plant to shield them from afternoon sunlight. So it could be any plant that would block sunlight and keep that soil and keep that plant material cooler. That would be a companion plant. Companion plant would be one plant benefiting from another plant. All right. Another system of companion planting would be using something very tall. For me, I'm not growing corn. Um, there's too many raccoons. It's just a pain in the butt. It's easier to, for the few times a year you eat corn, to go get it. But if you were to, let's say, sunflowers, now sunflowers a different matter. Sunflower gets tall. So a companion plant with that sunflower could be pole beans or peas, something that would use the ladder of that tall plant as as a scaffolding. Yeah, we see the bittersweet, right? It's the worst, but it grabs hold of everything and uses it as a scalp, you know, to get higher, to take down more. So you can do the same in your garden with your peas and your pole beans. Use your sunflower seed, your sunflower plants as scaffolding for them to go up. Then you don't have to worry so much about putting up fencing and that. You can, you see. So that's a beneficial companion plant. Um, Getting more into toxicity of roots, that's harder, and you need to kind of research that. That's not something we can cover today. But there are, yeah, all right. Companion planting too can be used to stop disease. Um, Monoculture is how for America most gardens are grown, right? Um, so when disease starts on one plant, it just goes through the garden. So companion planting would be to break up the garden a little bit. Plant things that benefit from each other. Earlier on, and we had talked about how any of the legumes, peas and beans, they they put a nitrogen in the soil, and you could, when you pull them up, you see little nodules on the root system. That tells you that, unless it's a disease, that tells you that that plant is affixing nitrogen in the soil. So once you've pulled out your early peas, uh, follow that up with a plant in that garden that will benefit from that nitrogen. And we talk on a fertilizer package, the first number is nitrogen. Nitrogen is for the leaves. Um, Nitrogen for the size of the leaves, for the color of the leaves, more nitrogen. And some plants are heavy, heavy nitrogen feeders. So following up peas and any of the beans, and you'll see a cover crop very often of clover, before a garden is tilled in. That again is a nitrogen fixative. So that would be another style of companion planting. Um, Something, plants that will benefit from what grew there before. Okay, so there's a lot of different styles of companion planting. Um, there's just so much to go from. But most of you are vegetable gardeners. So what I'm going to do is just give you a list of companion planting plants that will grow well together. How many of you are doing beds, raised beds, or even garden, garden rows? I printed out a list that would do well for you. So let's just go over. Can't read my own writing. Pathetic. So lettuces, spinaches, kales. So any of that early leafy greens, put those together. All right. They need the same temperature. They need the same light. They need the same nutrients in order to grow. All right. If you did celery, broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower, celery would be your most important plant in that planting because it does deter that white cabbage fly. Here again, going for fragrance, that is a good deterrent for the cabbage fly. So grow more celery. All right. Tomatoes. Tomatoes benefit from asparagus, but this is difficult because asparagus is a perennial root, but they fix into the soil and amend the soil in such a way that tomatoes benefit from it.
I planted asparagus last year. I had some, and I planted more. And I know I'm not supposed to cut it this year.
Yeah.
But do you cut it at all, or you just literally let it go?
What you're doing is you want those spears to come up.
Right.
Let's say one plant gives you 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Take one to eat it. But if all they give you is 1 or 2, leave them, because what that is, that's your solar collector feeding the roots. And asparagus is really long lived. I mean, once you plant that, you're in. That was, yeah, me deciding where am I going to put more asparagus and how many. I'm thinking, is 50 enough? Well, how many spears do you get? So depending, yeah.
It is. We have an old patch that's just coming in there. It was there when I moved there,
Mm-hmm.
and I just planted more because it's never enough.
It's never enough.
It's never enough.
It's never enough, and the season's so short.
Next year, can I cut it?
They're usually 2 to 3 years. Don't do it the first year, period.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, but the reason you're keep it fertilized and let those fronds fertilize what's below. Yeah. So another good companion plant with tomatoes is basil, and basil, because of the fragrance, helps to deter people that would come and dismantle your tomato plant. But remember that I told you dill is a good one. And anytime you can plant lovage in the garden, lovage is a great herb. I put it in the middle of the garden because it flowers about this tall. And but that flower, I see more wasps, varieties I've never seen before, come to that. They like that. And if you can encourage the wasps, you don't want your grandkids dancing around a plant covered with wasps. So kind of put it in the middle of the flower garden or in the middle of the herb garden where no one's going to be brushing by it, where you're not going to be antagonizing your guests. Let those wasps have that flower. It will do wonders for your garden. All right. So what else? Oh, another one that's good for tomatoes is parsley. So and here again, beneficial insect-wise, nutrient-wise. They don't compete for the same things. All right. What else did I want to say to you?
Do you do ground covers like in your gardens at all? Because I hear that sometimes with people they plant. And I hate it because it looks like weeds to me. But I think where I moved in, some of the beds had like some kind of ground cover flowering stuff. I don't know.
Ground cover has some benefits that if you use the right ground cover, and we're talking cover crop,
Yeah, that's
it's referred to as a cover crop. Put in at the end of the season to affix to build the soil. So that could be, like I said, any of the legumes, which would put nitrogen into the soil. But for someone doing raised beds, that can be all right, but it's going to require more work. Uh, you're not going to rotor-till the bed. What I do what I do in my gardens is I have learned to leave the plants and not clean the garden. Um, and then this time of year, another couple of weeks when the insects have had a chance to get away from that, I'll cut them down, but I leave the root system in the garden because it adds organic matter, um, but it also has a bacteria that attracts earthworms. And earthworm poop is, of course, its weight in gold. It's wonderful, not just for fertilizing, but for also when the plants take it up. I find that piercing, sucking insects are killed um, by the nutrients taken up from worm castings.
So does that happen in roads?
Rototilling, you kind of go down deeper, and when you rototill, you're bringing up more weed seeds. Um, but a cover crop, I think, would be to each his own. Like deciding is the nitrogen benefit from this worth all the work, um, and on what scale you're gardening on. Another
I hear a lot of don't do it. Don't.
Well, another reason for cover crops is to stop erosion, to stop wind from. Remember the Dust Bowl? I'm sure we were all alive then, but we've heard about that, and that was through soil erosion. So a lot of time cover crops are for that. Winter rye, my dad swore by it, but it's a lot of work. Rotor-tilling it and getting it done before it gets too tall kind of gives you a timeline. All right, yeah. So a companion planting, we could go on all day. Need to find a list of what you're growing and what plants go best with that. Y'all have access to internet? So yeah, and there's no books I have my dad, a book from my dad, and this one is wonderful. It lists every single plant you can imagine, and it gives you the whole history, but we'd be old by the time I got through this. So find a source for you. But companion planting will add to the health of your garden. So by putting the right things together that want the same thing, That's companion planting. Putting things that help each other, either to climb high or to get shade, that's companion planting. Companion planting to deter, uh, for me, I'm putting in some fruit trees on an estate that I take care for, and I'm putting in a lot of onions, because I'm tired of the deer like um, nibbling on everything. So I'm putting in a lot of alliums, a lot of onions, and things that will make them disgusted with me, and hopefully they go elsewhere.
Any words of wisdom? Slugs.
Yeah, slugs are, although they're slow moving, they're horrible little beings, and they can really decimate. I mean, I have seen them crawl up a blade of grass to get up to a table where I have plants growing. They hide. Best thing you can do is, I'll give you two things. Best thing you can do is remove anything in the garden that they can hide under. I find that sometimes you use cobblestones or bricks. The slugs go right between there, and they just hang out there all day until they're ready to come and do damage. So pick up any kind of litter or boards or anywhere where they might get comfortable. The next thing that you can do for them, and I find this works great, is beer. Um, I'm not a drinker, so I had to go to the market to get beer. And the first time I did it, I bought cheap beer. They weren't having it. Oh no, they weren't having it. So I didn't know, like what's the difference. So I went and got a more expensive beer. Oh yeah, they were all on board. So what I did is in the evening, get like a tuna fish can, and fill it with beer. Oh, you can't imagine how many will crawl in there, even though they see their brethren in there drowned. They don't care. They go, oh yeah, beer. And I have found that to be the best deterrent. People say copper, and they say uh, sprinkling things, but this stuff all washes away. Copper is expensive, and sharp shards of things. Well, if you want to work barefoot in your garden, you don't want to be doing that. Beer, but expensive beer. I think it can be flat beer. You know what I mean? Like pop a can and use that. But I have found that to be the very best way to gather them up. They have no shame. No, you can go into a can, and as long as there's room for one more to fit in there, they'll go there. As long as there's beer, it's disgusting. So just clean it up in the morning. But I find putting it out in the evening, because that's when they come. They don't come during the heat of the day. So clean up debris around the place, beer. Yeah. Any other questions? We're good? Then get to it.
Oh, sorry, I do have one question.
Yeah.
You said that you planted carrots outside now?
Depending on your soil, carrots need a light soil, like more sandy. If your soil's heavy, wait a while, because rain's coming. And because it's a root crop, it needs not to be like compacted. Yeah, a good carrot for Hartland is those half longs, the Denver half long. If you can get that seed, um, because it's a little shorter carrot, but it can do the Hartland heavy soil. Yeah. You're welcome.